This current Xbox generation launched with all the right tech, all the right promises, and absolutely none of the games to back it up. But within the last 5 years, a lot has changed, from me recommending it and absolutely loving this thing to, well, let's talk about it. Honestly, this video was a little hard to make because I really didn't know where to begin. Like, there's just so much to talk about, so much to uncover when it comes to the Xbox brand. But I suppose the best place to start is with the hardware and its launch. This current generation of Xbox didn't launch with just one variation, but two. The Series X and the S. The Series X being the older brother that came with a disk drive, and the Series S being the younger brother without one. Now, it's not really as simple as something like the PS5 with their disc and digital editions. These are two separate consoles that make a case for their own. And the Series S, when that launched and they announced it, it actually seemed pretty attractive. I'll get to why in just a minute. Now, the Series X boasts an AMD Zen 2 CPU with 8 cores at 3.8 GHz, a GPU with 12 teraflops, 16 gigs of GDDR6, and a 1TB SSD of internal storage that can be expanded with an expansion card. The Series S features a Zen 2 CPU, a 4 teraflop GPU, 10 gigs of GDDR6, and a 512 SSD in the internal storage with, again, another that you can expand. Now, while the Series X does sport all those extra features and a disk drive, and is able to support gaming in 4K 60, whereas the Series S is only able to do up to 1440p, without a disk drive. So when you look at the two at first, you might be like, okay, well, one is definitely much weaker, and doesn't have all those extra features, so why would I get one? But what made it so attractive was the price. The Series X launched at $499, whereas the Series S launched at $299. Like, that price difference is crazy. And this was really around the time when Game Pass was just starting to find its real footing. And at that time, even up until really earlier this year, I would have said that really Game Pass is the best deal in gaming. But a lot has changed since then. We will get more into that in a moment. But when it first launched, you had, this digital console that, yes, it couldn't do all the things that the X could do, but you were still able to play next-gen games for a fraction of the cost. Like, it was definitely very affordable. And then factor that in with Game Pass, and you've got yourself a little nice Game Pass machine. And for years, I recommended this to people who were just trying to get into the gaming ecosystem, to really get their foot in, because it's probably the most accessible way to approach getting into this hobby. Getting something of that sort of hardware, that sort of caliber at that price tag, and then paired with a library with hundreds of games that you can just dive into, whether it be Halo and Gears of War and Mass Effect if you have Game Pass Ultimate, and like just hundreds and hundreds of awesome games. Like, it's a no-brainer, and it's awesome. And it was actually the thing that really made me jump into the ecosystem in the first place. I purchased a Series S right at launch, as soon as I could get my hands on one, because it meant I could play a bunch of games that I hadn't experienced, and new ones, without forking a whole load of money to buy them outright. It also meant that I could try out games that I probably never would have, without having to, sail the seas. In fact, the only sailing of seas that I did at the time was in Sea of Thieves. And, no joke, but that was literally one of the main reasons I was interested in Game Pass in the first place. But it was an awesome deal either way, and I was just so in love with that little machine, because it meant there's so many games I could finally try, and it was just a nice little companion to have alongside with my PS5. And so for a few years, I was actually rocking with the Series S. It was a nice little console that, was a nice companion to my PS5. But after a while, as I played more games, I just thought, you know what, I kind of really want to upgrade to the Series X. I want that extra performance. I want to be able to experience, these games in a higher graphical fidelity and, with better performance. So I sold my Series S in exchange for an X, which you cannot see in this video, but when I got it, I loved that thing. I got the Diablo 4 bundle, and I dived pretty deep into that, and yeah, I had a great time. Now, one of the things that I really loved about finally getting an Xbox was the controller. I mean, yeah, I really love the DualSense. The DualSense is great. It has all those extra features and, the haptics and everything. But if I were to choose between the two controllers, I'm usually going to gravitate towards the Xbox One, simply because it just feels much more comfortable in the hand to me. Sure, it doesn't have all those fancy bells and whistles, but it feels much more ergonomic to me, and I find it far more comfortable. I also really love the ability to go onto Design Lab and to customize the controller to your heart's desire and really make it however you want. It feels really personal. They've got so many options for you to play with, you know, with the buttons and the D-pads and the thumbsticks. All of that is customizable and you can choose whatever color that you want. It's also really cool when they get to do little collabs like with, you know, Fallout. And I feel like whenever they release editions of the controller, like it feels like there's just so many more things that you can do with it. And as far as the two controllers go, I feel like Xbox has been doing a much better job in that department. So for that little while, I thought that Xbox and Microsoft were probably some of the most consumer-friendly when it came to gaming, because you had Game Pass, which was just an incredible value, and then you had, you know, the Series S. I did understand that, yes, it was something that was holding a lot of developers back when it came to developing games, because it meant that you have to optimize all these different games for that weaker platform. And I mean, I'm not in game dev, I don't know exactly how all those things work, but it does make sense that it was holding a lot of things back. That being said, we've had a lot of cross-gen games for the last few years, so I don't think it was just the Series S that was holding it back. It was really a lot of factors, but it was definitely one of them. I do remember when Gotham Knights dropped, and that was a huge factor when it came to being able to develop some of the co-op features for it, because it just wouldn't support it well enough. More specifically, I should say, from what I recall, it had lots of GPU limitations, thus causing lots of performance issues and rubber banding, and thus having the uniform 30 FPS lock, because, you know, co-op just wasn't really playing well with it. And then that was also a big reason why Baldur's Gate 3 didn't launch on the Xbox at first. It needed to take some time to properly optimize for that platform, especially because when it comes to parity, it's very difficult. It's not easy. Now, the most appealing part of any console are the exclusives. People buy consoles for the exclusives. I've said that before, I'll say it again. That is the main thing. And so, I mean, yes, consoles are cheaper than buying a PC outright and changing and swapping out the components every couple of years, but people don't usually buy consoles specifically for that reason. I mean, I kind of do, but then also I'm really in them for the exclusives. That's why I'm primarily a PlayStation guy. And yes, once upon a time I was a Sony pony, and then I became 13. It happens. But even for Xbox, a big reason to come to this platform and this ecosystem, is for its exclusives. The big one being Halo. And Halo, yes, that did eventually launch, Halo Infinite, but not for a full year until after the Xbox launched and after it was supposed to initially release. Yes, that's what I mean. Most of the output coming from Xbox was either delayed, or it was delivered and it was broken and or not really well optimized, or both, or it just was completely scrapped. It's one of those three. Actually, you know, there's a fourth one where there are probably projects that we haven't even heard about that just have been canned long before we even got the chance to see them, before they even saw the light of day. Now, I know it's a common sentiment across all platforms that they don't have any games, and it's been a long ongoing joke for many, many generations, but like, in terms of Xbox, man, is it empty. Because apart from like a few games that we get, like South of Midnight and Indiana Jones, which are great, how much of Xbox's current output are we getting? Honestly, it feels like the library is very small, and when you don't have a particularly big library, then it makes it harder for people to want to flock to your platform. And for years throughout this generation, like every year, it felt like there was a promise that there were going to be new games coming, right? They would always have these showcases with this huge lineup of games. Half of those games, if not most of them, have not been released, whether that be because they got delayed or the whole game got canned and just the entire project shut down. Yeah, we're not seeing a whole lot of them. A couple of them trickle in, like I said, but aside from these few cases, you don't really see much of it. And Indiana Jones, mind you, isn't even exclusive anymore because it just hopped over to PlayStation just earlier this year. It was only a timed exclusive. So, like, I don't know what else they've got. Definitely not Bethesda, because yes, they own Bethesda and you can play all the games, day one, Game Pass, whatever. But like, you can still play all your Bethesda games on PlayStation, save for Starfield, but inevitably, that's going to come over too. And by the way, Starfield, I was going to review a couple of years ago, but then I ended up not doing that because my disappointment was so immeasurable, I just wanted to move on, and I got consumed by Baldur's Gate 3. It happens, okay? But year over year, we kept seeing all these promises from Xbox, from all the showcases and everything, that yes, all these games are coming. You know, we have all these partners, we're putting more trust into the Japan side, and we're really expanding and growing and allowing our creatives to create as they want. But like, what happened? Yeah, layoffs happened. Yes, layoffs aren't really necessarily exclusive to Xbox or Microsoft, but a large significant portion of them have been coming from them. A lot of the layoffs, a lot of the job cuts, entire studios shutting down are a result of them. And part of it might be, okay, well, if it's studios shutting down like Arkane Austin when they developed Redfall, it's because, well, the game just wasn't good, right? And so they don't want to have that. Well, A, I don't think that that's worth shutting down an entire studio just because they made one bad game. They should have the opportunity to try again. B, I feel like that was probably more on, you know, the executives trying to push and rush things out. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, for Redfall specifically, shouldn't be enough to shut an entire studio down. But fine, you'd be like, okay, well, they just made a dud, and that's what caused it, maybe. It's not the case, but just follow me for a second. Then yes, that means that if you make a bad game equals shut down. So what if we make a good game and everyone loves it? Will we be okay? No, because Tango Gameworks, that's exactly what happened. Tango Gameworks you may know as the developers from Evil Within, but they just randomly dropped on a random Wednesday. They shadow dropped the much beloved Hi-Fi Rush. Yeah, there was no build-up or announcement or lead-up to that. It just, they had the showcase, and then they immediately dropped it. It was insane. I remember watching that showcase being like, oh, this looks pretty damn cool. It's a rhythm game that has this cool cel-shaded style, and I don't know, it looks like a really fun time. And then they're like, hey, guess what? It's dropping right now, and it's on Game Pass. And every time you have that play day one on Game Pass logo, by the way, that just makes everyone even more excited because they're like, wow, I get to try this out. I don't have to spend that extra money because I'm already paying for the subscription. I get to try this out and see what it's like for myself, and in often cases like this right now. And so that was exciting. And so you'd think that's something to be rewarded and celebrated. And you'd think, okay, well, maybe they didn't sell that well. But according to Microsoft's own marketing team, it was a success. Yet they still shut them down. Why? Because, well, at the end of the day, corporate greed takes all. And what am I talking about? Yes, that's right. I'm talking about the big one. I'm talking about the acquisition. The acquisition. The acquisition. The acquisition. The acquisition. Yes, the acquisition. The Activision Blizzard acquisition. That one. Yeah. Let's talk about it. So now it's time to talk about the big one. The big one being the big acquisition, the biggest acquisition in gaming history. That being Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard King for $69 billion. That is a number that I don't think any of us could fathom. I certainly can't. Like, $1 billion is a lot, but 69, something that most of us would probably never even see in our lives. So it's crazy. Obviously not for a massive corporation such as Microsoft, obviously, but still, even then, it wasn't something that any of us expected. Like, it's just a big move, because even for them, that is a big move. You don't just throw $69 billion out of nowhere. But doing so means that they were able to acquire games like Call of Duty and all of Blizzard's games like World of Warcraft and Overwatch and Diablo. But then, most importantly, as I've mentioned, they acquired Activision Blizzard King. King being the key subject here, because King is far more important than you think it is. King owns Candy Crush. Yeah, you're probably wondering, okay, so who cares? They own Candy Crush. No, but Candy Crush is a bigger deal than you probably realize, because the mobile gaming market is massive. It is way bigger than any of us could imagine. I'm going to put it up on screen here for you to look at. But yeah, as you can see, it's huge. So that was probably the primary motivating factor. Now you're thinking, okay, yeah, so Candy Crush is huge. The whole mobile market is huge. But also, they weren't just going after specifically the gaming side of things, because in case you didn't know, the console wars are kind of over, especially now. We'll get more into that in a bit, but like, they have been over for a while because Microsoft's real competitors aren't so much Sony and Nintendo. Their real competitors, just like everyone else, is social media and time. Everyone is trying to fight for your time. And so they're gonna do whatever they gotta do to pull you away as much as possible from that screen to go over to their screen. They want as much time as possible on their platform instead of the other one. They don't want you scrolling on TikTok. They want you to play. Just like TikTok wants you to keep scrolling and not play or watch Netflix. And so what better way to do that than tapping into the mobile market, where it's already so big. Now, on the surface, it sounds like a smart idea, and maybe it still kind of is. I don't know. I'm not a business major, but it definitely was not good for anybody else but them, because we've seen the repercussions of what happened after the fact. We've had massive layoffs, and not just obviously in this industry, but really prominent in this industry and really prominent within Microsoft. It's very heartbreaking, and I can't even list the number of times that this has happened and how many employees have been laid off. I'm going to show them on screen here for you to look at. But it's so many that, like, it's overwhelming. And these aren't just numbers, these aren't just statistics, these are real people with real lives. They're the ones who have carried your industry on their backs, and they're just being discarded like nothing. Because why? Because even though, according to Microsoft, they're doing just fine, I guess they're not. They still want to cut as many jobs and as many people as possible. Probably because all these corporate execs always want to be constantly in the green. They always want to make a significant portion more year over year. They can't stand being a little stagnant or just a little bit better than last year. No. They need to be much higher. And how do you do that? Yeah, you cut people instead of just taking it for once and taking care of your employees. No, they don't want to do that. And then beyond that, on the consumer side of things, it's not great either. It really isn't. Because what that meant was also the increase of everything else to make up those lost costs. Starting with the Xbox itself. The Xbox didn't just go up once, but twice this year. That is insane. I don't even understand that business model, because if I assume they weren't selling that well before, why would they sell any better now that they're even more? Someone explain that to me. Again, I'm not a business major, but to me that doesn't make any sense. And then on top of that, they raised the prices of Game Pass. Let's look at the history, shall we? Starting with $14.99 in 2019 to $16.99 in 2023, which I didn't particularly like, but I could stomach it. 2024 went up to $19.99. Absolutely hated that one. Then October rolled around, and they raised that sucker all the way to $30. $30 is insane. Like, yes, of course you're getting all those games, sure. And there are a lot of games that you're getting day and date. Brand new games. But there aren't a lot of games to justify that, and, like, you're not owning them. So, who in their right mind will want to pay 30 USD for a subscription like that? In fact, it made so many of us, including myself, immediately cancel it. Not just because I don't have my Xbox currently with me, it's in a storage container somewhere, but even if I did have one, I wouldn't have resubscribed like I do monthly, or I did monthly. I may resubscribe for a couple things here and there if I absolutely have to, only because I do reviews, but even still, it's going to be a tough one to swallow, especially because I pay in Canadian. Then, at the end of last year, they released several models of the Xbox Series consoles, such as the 1TB Black Series S, the all-digital Robot White, still 1TB Series X, and the 2TB Galaxy Black Series X. So now we have extra tiers and extra ones to choose from, which seems like, oh, they're giving you more accessible options. But I don't know, I feel like I could be wrong, but it feels like another tactic to try to get you to buy more, which I guess in that way it's kind of smart, but raising the prices? Really? Now, if that wasn't strange enough, get this. So obviously in the last few years, we've seen them pivot from being hardware focused to really software focused. They seem to be more publisher first. And we've seen that with them starting to port their games onto other platforms. Now, at first, I thought this was just gonna be a few games. I didn't see this going exactly where it went. But when they first ported over Pentiment, Sea of Thieves, and Grounded, I thought, you know, these are just a few games that don't necessarily define the Xbox brand, right? They're not really the first things that you think about when you think of Xbox. And I was like, you know what, I'm kind of for it. In fact, I am kind of for, you know, non-exclusivity. I think exclusivity should just kind of be a thing of the past because it is pro-consumer in that way. Because it allows you to play games on whatever platform you already have. So I thought that was fine. But then they ported over Forza Horizon. And that started to make me really second guess. Because I was like, okay, maybe they are really going in that trajectory. Maybe people were right. And then they ported over Gears of War. Yeah, that was really the nail in the coffin that told me that yes, they are no longer interested in really being a hardware thing. They are really focused on publisher first. And if that didn't already tell you that, then Halo Campaign Evolved did, because that is coming to all platforms, including the PlayStation 5 and the Nintendo Switch 2. When they first announced that, even though I was kind of prepared for it, I also still wasn't prepared because it just feels like a weird dream to see Master Chief with the PlayStation logo slapped on. It is strange. It is bizarre to me. But it happened. And excited as I am for people who have never experienced Halo or Gears before, and as much as I think it is consumer friendly, because I think, you know, exclusivity should be a thing of the past, and everyone should be able to play whatever games on whatever platform they so choose. At the same time, I also feel for those who have been Xbox loyalists and Xbox fans for many years. And it makes you question, because one of the primary purposes of getting a console is really the exclusives. People go and flock to these consoles so they can play their exclusives. If that weren't the case, then they would probably all just flock to PC, or whichever one has the most amount of games. And it's part of the reason why Nintendo is doing so well. I mean, tech-wise, they're kind of a generation behind everyone else, but they're still doing so well. Why? Because there's only really one place, apart from emulation, that you can get your Mario, your Zelda, your Metroid, your Pikmin. You can't get that anywhere else. But now we're seeing Master Chief flock his way onto PlayStation and Nintendo, which is not something I would have ever expected, and to me it kind of feels a little wrong. But anyway, that really feels like it solidifies, you know, where they're going, where they're headed. The direction makes sense, the trajectory makes sense, that yes, they are starting to move away from hardware and just being a software-focused company. But then, strangely, they make the claim that they're still gonna do hardware and that they're still very much hardware-focused. I mean, yeah, okay, they might release more hardware, but like, are you? All of this really starts making people question, is the Xbox brand dying? Is Xbox dead? Now, I'm not gonna say Xbox is dead. It's at least not yet. Could it die? Maybe eventually, I don't know. But as it currently stands, no, it isn't quite dead yet. And I really hate to say that, because I'm actually a fan of Xbox, just as I am a fan of PlayStation and Nintendo, because I am platform agnostic. But it is just really sad to see. And if it wasn't already clear that they're, you know, trying to expand their market and aren't really focusing on the Xbox side of things, I mean, they recently just released a handheld in collaboration with Asus, the Asus ROG Ally X. Now, when they announced it, I was actually super stoked because I was like, wow, they're actually finally tapping into the handheld market, which is something that we've all wanted for so long. Because honestly, more than remote playing my PS5 on my Steam Deck, a lot of times I'm actually just playing Game Pass on there, right? I'm playing it through xCloud, and xCloud runs very seamlessly. It's awesome, but I would kind of wish to play it natively. And yeah, there are other handhelds that do that, but you know, the idea of an Xbox branded handheld was actually really cool to me. And then now that it's released, I'm not as excited about it. I mean, yes, like specs wise and everything, I totally get it. But at the same time, the price, I don't know, it just doesn't seem that justifiable to me. At least not right now. But at least it is a handheld PC, right? Like it's not just a regular handheld. It is a full PC. We're running Windows, mind you. But anyway, thank you for watching all the way through. If you enjoyed that video, please leave a like. It really does help out the channel. But if you're interested in my thoughts on the PlayStation side of things, well, click the card right here. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. And happy gaming.